Here's the important difference between a class and a struct. So here, this is a class here, and this is a struct. So what I'm trying to do here is make a copy of the class, like as shown here, and then make a copy of the struct. And this is the important difference between class and struct. When you make a copy of the class, it will actually copy the reference to the same object. So in this case, when I say P2 is equal to P1, it's actually going to refer to the same object in memory. So when you change something with P1, it will be reflected in P2. And when you change something with P2, it will be reflected in P1. But they both are referring to the same object. So that's why classes are known as reference types. While with the struct, it's known as the value type. So when you make a copy of it, so here I've got sp1, struct1, and struct2, this behaves differently to the class object. Because these are value types, it's actually going to create a physical copy in memory of this. So sp1 will be an independent variable and sp2 would be an independent variable. So they both are not linked, they're not referenced. So when you change the values in sp2, they will not be reflected in sp1. Unlike the class where you change the values in p2, then they will be reflected in p1. What we're going to do is we are going to modify the values in p2. So this is the class and see what output we get. And if we modify the values in the struct here and see what we get. So if I run this code, and as you can see here, when we first did this, so original value of P1 is x equals 1, y equals 2. And here you can see P2 is the same. And then for struct as well, they're both the same. But when you modify the value, so here, when we're changing the value of P2 and sp2, see how they behave differently now. For the classes, you've also changed after the modification, even though we just did P2. And of course, P2 is reflected here. And then for struct, it's behaving differently. It's actually keeping the original values here, even though we are modifying it. And you can see sp2 is reflecting the updated values. So these two are independent of each other because they're value types, while the classes are referring to the same object. So here, that's why the values have changed for both. So when we copy the P1 object into P2, this is actually copying the reference to the P1 object. And remember, classes and objects are stored on the heap, while structs are stored on the stack. So this is an important difference to take note of and make sure you understand this fully around structs and classes and essentially reference types and value types and how they behave when you do something like this versus a struct doing something completely different.